Hey Callie J. It is Saturday, we're in January now, right?
Yeah.
January 15th. And you remember how when we did the Nerd Off videos, I started mine with something about Nanowrimo? Well, I never finished my Nanowrimo story, but I did write the first chapter, and it's not great, but I like it, and I wanted to share it with you, so I'm gonna read it to you. It's 5 pages, so hopefully it won't go over the 4-minute limit. But if it does, you can punish me because I want to end it. Parents, family, grandma, this is a teenage story, so there is some swearing in it. Not a lot, but I don't want to get punished, so you don't have to watch this vlog. I would understand. It's not a nightmare. Not to me, anyway. I told a girl once, a friend, and she looked at me like I was crazy to talk about it so calmly. It happens at least twice a week. It starts out different every time, but I know it when it's coming. So in a dream, I could be riding a bike or talking to Barack Obama, and I just stop. I hold up my hand to stop a conversation, or I leave whatever scenario is playing in my mind, and it's like I'm suddenly walking blind. My eyes are closed. I can still tell what's going on, still see pictures and hear things, but I feel the desperate urge to keep my eyes closed, like I'm holding on to something that I very much do not want to drop. Until I do. Drop it, I mean. In my dream, I come to a door in a long blue-black hallway where there are no lights, and it's very cold. The only light comes from underneath the door, out a little crack, and in the dream, I know it will be warm behind that door, and I'll be able to see again. I move to open the door, and I can hear my footsteps resounding on the floor. My dream is always vivid here just before I open it. I feel dream goosebumps and imagine in high definition. Everything I hear, my footsteps, my breath, is crystal clear, and I smell night. But I still can't see. My eyes are glued shut. I put my hand on the door handle and turn it slowly, my stomach filling with bile and heat, until the door is all the way open, and for a moment I am relieved because behind the door is a meadow, bright and green, filled with wildflowers. Sometimes there's even a butterfly or a rabbit. Apparently, I dream in a tampon commercial. Feeling safe, I open my eyes. Then, I see my father. And the door falls apart, and the hallway turns to blackness, and the light in the meadow shatters. I fall slowly, muted and shocked. The wind gets knocked out of me, and I never stop falling. I get further and further down into the blackness, to the point where even though my eyes are finally open, they're useless. I can't see anything. I fall for what seems like hours until my alarm wakes me and I get out of bed. But it's not a nightmare. It's the only time I ever get to see Dad. I had that dream the day I met Amberly Jacobs again. In the summer, I spend almost every day the same. I wake up at 5:30 and I pull on my sneakers and some old work clothes that are covered in paint from this time when my grandpa and I repainted his deli and I got heat stroke and a little silly. Then I go and I sit on the front porch and wait for my best friend to show up. Kodandan Sengupta and I have been best friends since the 3rd week of 2nd grade. He was new. His family had recently moved from New Jersey to Connecticut, and the other kids in my class, like the fucking CT douchebags that they were and still remain to be, were picking on him. Kodandan has always been a little weedy looking, but people appreciate that these days, i.e. the lead singer of every popular emo alt-rock wine tube band ever. What people still can't seem to find attractive is an enormous nose. Even when we were 7, Kodandan had this beak, a hunker, a face horn, if you will, that stood out like the Empire State Building on the face that was New York City. So, obviously the kids in our class started to pick on him. I don't care what nostalgia tells you. Kids that were vicious to you in high school and middle school were just as vicious back when they could barely write their names. Plus, it didn't help that he was a first-generation American with an accent passed on from his parents so thick you'd think he'd just stepped off a boat. I was coloring when Kodandan came in. If I recall correctly, it was a beautiful portrait of a dog riding on the wings of an airplane. And then the teacher, Miss Bartz, older than God and meaner than Lucifer, brought him up to the front of the entire class, keeping her tight velociraptor grip on his shoulder, and introduced him to all of us. Class! This is your new peer, Mr. Kodandan Sangita. Miss, my name is Kodandan Sengupta, miss. Oh, my apologies, Kodandan. She then took a seat at her desk where she opened a copy of People magazine and began to eat a chicken salad sandwich. Once she shut up, the rest of the class went wild. What kind of name is Codandon? Why do you have such a big nose? Why are you so dark? Why do you have a funny voice? Codandon's got a big nose. Codandon's got a big nose. The big man on campus, or as a big of a man as a 7-year-old can get, Tommy Smith, as white as a 7-year-old can get too, was not to be outdone by his minions and came up with this. Look, new kid, we don't want you here. None of us do. So why don't you take your big nose and your stupid name and go back to wherever you came from? I like to think that it was because my dad was a police officer and because my mom took me to Greek Orthodox church every Sunday and because my grandpa had been in the war that I did what I did next. I stood up from my coloring and walked over to Tommy and Codandon. I put my hands between them and told Tommy to stop being such a big jerk, that Codandon was welcome here just as much as we were. And we didn't want to get in trouble, did we? Because it's like the last nice day of the year and we don't want recess taken away, do we? Tommy spent a moment pondering my infallible logic, after which he promptly stepped on my foot. I, being the bigger man, punched him in the nose. I was about to invite Codandon to share the good box of crayons with me, but then Mrs. Bartz realized her administrative and immoral obligation to stand up for the unjustly punished and put me in the timeout corner. And then made a point to distribute popsicles to everyone but me and Codandon. When Codandon asked why he didn't get one, she responded with, "Oh, Codandon, are you sure you can eat those? I don't want you breaking any dietary restriction laws." Codandon demurely informed her that unless they were cow popsicles, he should be fine. She put him in timeout too. Every morning at 6 o'clock, he loops out of his driveway and stops to stand in front of my stoop. We look at each other and then we start to run. We do a 6.5-mile loop that goes up and down 59 and then back into the back roads of Monroe. We pass a horse farm, a lake. It's the local party spot. People go and get high on the dam where someone spray painted a large and vibrant marijuana leaf. And then past this weird organic commune thing where people come from out of town to buy rock statues of dinosaurs and reproductions of famous Renaissance sculptures. And then we go back to my house and laugh. See, we hate running. But somehow we got it in our heads freshman year that if we joined the cross-country team, we'd get super sexy and girls would love us. But we soon realized that while running would get us in shape, it would not make us popular and certainly wouldn't shrink Codandon's schnoz, nor would it make me look any less stereotypically Greek. But we run 6 miles every day, even though we hate it, past the smelly-ass horse farm, past the polluted lake, and past the actually really friendly commune. Because it's something to do, and because it's practically the only time we see each other. And also because we're kind of boring. For people with our family backgrounds and with such smashing good looks, you'd think we'd be more spectacular. I mean, we try. Codandon is in choir and the chemistry club, and I do community service work and I'm the secretary for our class. See, we're dull. Although we both cook really well. We come from food families. My grandpa owns the deli market and we have Greek specialties cooking all the time, so I know how to do that. My mom taught me because she needs to spend time with the books now that Grandpa is getting older. And Codandon works part-time in his family's restaurant right across the street. Taj India makes the best Indian food I've ever had, but I may be biased because it's the only Indian food I've ever had. Codandon works there and lives there, or at least in the house behind the restaurant, with all 17 members of his extended family. His mom and dad are technically the owners, but his grandparents live with them and so do his 5 brothers and sisters and his aunt and uncle and their kids. The dude shares his bedroom with 3 younger boys. So after that day in the timeout corner, I went home to see construction on the old post office that had been across my street, and a fleet of Indian people moving boxes out of cars, and Codandon getting off on the same bus stop as me. Later, his mother and aunt came over with something that burned my mouth so badly that I tasted the spices for 3 weeks, and then they formally introduced me to the boy who would become my best friend. After we go running, we go back to the kitchen of my papoose deli, and then for around a good hour, we sit around for around a good hour making jokes and eating until his mama calls across the road. We can hear her because all Indian mothers have lungs of steel. And then we go work for the rest of the day, me until about 5:30 because that's when the deli part of the market closes, and him about 9 o'clock because there are child labor laws in Connecticut. And then sometimes we get together and hang out, generally in my room, because when we go to his, there's a surplus of small Indian children who think we are monkey bars and like to stand in front of the TV when no one's paying attention to them. listening to whatever music he's currently obsessed with while I read whatever random facts I found out that day. I like random knowledge, and Codandan is the only one who doesn't mind how excited I get about the cellular structure of the infantile moon jellyfish, especially when it doesn't relate to anything we're talking about at the time. This morning, my mother had to run to the bank, so Codandan and I ate our post-run breakfast at the front counter of the market. After about a half hour staring, mesmerized at the Today Show on the TV above the counter, it could be studied, the terrifying hold of early morning fluff news on the mind of an adolescent boy. And stuffing our face with leftover pizza from the night before, yeah, Greek families order pizza too, Greg Lampchance comes into the market, grabs a yogurt smoothie, and comes up to the counter. Greg Lampchance is one of those guys who sort of revolves in everyone's social circle without having any real relationships. But he's a nice enough guy and damn good at math, so we keep him around. And because Greg knows so many people, he knows a lot of the gossip, which is also useful when you want to be socially connected to your peers, but no one will talk to you because you have a big nose and can barely have a conversation without dropping facts about where General Lee's horse shat during the Battle of the Wilderness. True story. Hey Greg, how's vacation treating you? I said as I ran up his smoothie. Oh, decent enough. My dad's got me working in his office as a file lackey. He doesn't pay me anything, but I do get to use the car whenever I want, which is good collateral, I guess. Codandan and I, being teenage boys, nodded and hummed in response. Hey, did you guys hear? Amber Lee Jacobs is back. It was like a movie moment. I swear to God, it was as if I'd handed my life over to John Hughes and to a bad 80s script, because the minute Greg finished that statement, Amber Lee walked into our market, came to the counter, and said, "Are you guys open?" I had to bite my tongue to keep the inevitable "for anything" from spilling